Power is the most addictive thing on earth, and those at risk of losing it don't care how many die, and how many lives it takes in their efforts to reclaim it. Autocrats are narcissistic, which is a characteristic of sociopaths and psychopaths. They like the world to revolve around them, which is why they crave power in an extreme way. Their serotonin levels skyrocket with mass manipulation. Therefore, power is never enough. All politicians in leadership positions strive for autocracy, which is not held back by their principles, which they voice, nor by conscience and common sense, which they lose, if they were there, but by social innervation, which they want to control as much as possible. The nature of power, therefore, is that it is constantly increasing, therefore desire for power can never be satisfied. Power therefore shapes everyone who possesses it in its own image, and it does so completely insidiously and imperceptibly. Political leaders who are extremely dependent on power are convinced that they are in control, and quickly convince themselves that any abuse they commit in the name of power can be justified by their noble goals. But there is no addict who can control the subject of their addiction. The nature of power is therefore echoed in the mentality of all those exercising power, and it is always the same. Maximizing power as far as circumstances allow. Therefore, the ruling elite is shockingly opportunistic and unprincipled, which will never hesitate to sacrifice the vast majority of society just to survive the present. An autocrat is a political leader who has maximized power to the greatest extent possible. He can be called successful in terms of his purpose. Narcissistic, Machiavellian manipulator and cynical compromiser at the same time. He is an enemy of outstanding individuals, whom he instinctively feels are a threat to his power. Like all obsessives, the autocrat is convinced that he deserves the subject of his obsession, and experiences it as an injustice if anyone tries to limit his access to it. But the truth is that he who enjoys power should not exercise power, and he who cannot imagine his life without power should not possess it whatsoever. But there is no one to stop them. They are constantly testing society to see how far they can go, and the longer they are allowed to go, the more daring, unscrupulous and arrogant they become. They only stop when they hit a wall. In fact, he is so unprincipled that he hates and paranoidly fears anyone who he believes could potentially stand in the way of his power. The autocrat therefore removes all real or perceived rivals from the vicinity of his power, who could intellectually reach his intellectual level, and surrounds himself with lackeys, executors, servile omega males, whom he knows they do not pose any threat to his power. And he's not wrong about that. These servants do not have the intellectual ability, charisma and authority of the leader, and, most importantly, they are unable to decide and act independently. They are the leader's clones. They also know very well that they are nothing without their owner. The leader made someone out of them. They depend on their leader like vassals because without the leader they too would disappear. Therefore, they are interested in maintaining the current status quo, because they owe their existence to it. The leader knows this well and is calm about them, but he keeps them on a short leash, as his obsession keeps him on it, without having the faintest idea of it. The eternal problem of autocracies is therefore always the question of succession. Autocracies never survive the autocrat, because there is no one among the servants who can take the place of the autocrat. It takes more or less time for another suitable leader candidate to emerge from the ranks, and even more time for him to build and consolidate his power, if only because power does not tolerate a vacuum. But that will be another autocracy. The point is that members of society are as dependent on the autocrat as the autocrat is on power. Is social psychosis and addiction in an autocracy? Wouldn't it be better to let go of the addiction, just like the autocrat with his addiction?